Yo, what's up? It's Marcus. And today we're diving into a wild history story that sounds fake but is totally real. And yeah, it gets messy fast. Picking the worst pope ever sounds easy, right? But trust me, the list is stacked like a drama show, where every season gets crazier than the last one. We're talking secrets, power plays, shady deals, and some moments that make you go, wait, this actually happened inside the Vatican. For real, no cap, history gets weird. So grab a snack, sit back, and keep your mind open, because this ride jumps from creepy courtrooms to royal parties that look more like chaos than church business. There have been almost 300 popes across 2,000 years, which means plenty of chances for mistakes, scandals, and bad decisions that changed everything later. But here's the big question. What even makes someone the worst? Is it personal behavior, bad leadership, or damage that keeps hurting people long after they're gone? Some popes lived wild lives, others made terrible political moves, and a few managed to do both at the same time, which honestly takes a special level of disaster. To make this list, the actions had to be shocking. Not just awkward or embarrassing, we're talking moments that made whole cities angry and shook the church itself. Let's start with a story that feels like something out of a horror movie. And I'm not exaggerating, because it involves a courtroom and a body. Meet Pope Stephen VI. A man remembered less for parties and more for one extremely dark decision that still makes historians pause today. He hated his predecessor, Pope Formosus, and that grudge did not end when Formosus died, which is already a red flag right there. Instead of moving on, Stephen ordered the body dug up, dressed in papal clothes, and placed on a throne for a trial that shocked everyone watching. Imagine a courtroom where one side cannot speak, cannot move, and still gets accused of crimes while a crowd watches in total confusion and fear. The dead pope was declared guilty. His body was treated with zero respect, and what happened next pushed people from uncomfortable to completely furious overnight. Parts were removed, the remains were thrown into the river, and rumors spread across Rome faster than wildfire during a dry summer afternoon. People started saying miracles happened when the body washed ashore, and whether true or not, the public turned against Stephen in a heartbeat. Crowds protested, leaders lost patience, and before long the man who held the highest office was removed, locked away, and met a very rough ending himself. That whole episode became a warning story about revenge, showing how personal hate can wreck not only reputations but entire institutions built on trust. Now let's swing to the opposite vibe, from cold cruelty to straight-up party mode, because the next pope lived like rules were just suggestions. Say hello to Pope John XII, who became pope as a teenager and treated the job more like a VIP pass than a sacred duty. He came from a powerful family, already loved fancy food, expensive drinks, and attention, so giving him more power only made things louder and wilder. Instead of calming down, the palace turned into a non-stop celebration where church business took a backseat to music, gambling, and constant guests. Stories from that time describe debts piling up, decisions getting sloppy, and leaders across Europe wondering who was actually running things behind those walls. People whispered that friends and lovers had more influence than advisors, which made serious politics look like a game played at midnight. When authority starts to look like a joke, trust disappears fast, and that's exactly what happened, as respect for the office kept dropping lower each year. The ending was just as dramatic, with a scandal involving a noble family and a confrontation that turned violent, proving actions eventually bring consequences. Whether every detail is true or not, the reputation stuck. And his name became shorthand for what happens when power meets zero self-control. Next up is someone whose story sounds almost unreal, not because of parties, but because of how young he was when everything started. Meet Pope Benedict IX, a teenager connected to powerful relatives who helped him grab the top position before most people finished school. His rise was backed by money and influence, which already made people suspicious about whether leadership was earned or simply purchased behind closed doors. His rule brought violence, theft, and fear, pushing regular citizens to the point where they finally forced him out just to breathe again. But here's where it gets crazy. He came back with support, took the position again, and acted like nothing had happened the first time. Then, in one of history's strangest moves, he decided he wanted to leave the job for personal reasons, and actually sold the position to someone else. Yes, you heard that right, the highest office in the church treated like a business deal, which shocked even powerful leaders watching from outside Rome. That decision made the political situation explode, drawing attention from emperors and foreign powers who were tired of the non-stop instability in the city. Even after being pushed out again, he tried one more comeback, proving that letting go of power can be harder than getting it in the first place. By the time it finally ended, the damage to trust and order had lasted years, leaving people exhausted and unsure what would happen next. Now we jump forward in time to a different kind of problem. Not wild parties or revenge trials, but money, influence, and decisions that changed history forever. Enter Pope Leo X, born into the famous Medici family, surrounded by wealth, art, and big expectations from day one. He loved culture, supported painters, sculptors, and huge building projects that shaped the look of Rome for generations, which sounds great on the surface. But funding all that beauty required massive spending. And soon the church treasury started running dangerously low despite income coming from across Europe. Wars were financed, relatives were helped into power, and the costs kept rising faster than anyone could manage responsibly without serious consequences. To solve the problem, new ways to raise money appeared, and one of them would spark a reaction nobody expected at the time. Payments connected to forgiveness became widespread, turning faith into something that looked transactional, which made many believers deeply uncomfortable and angry. A monk named Martin Luther spoke out against the practice in 1517, challenging authority and starting debates that spread across entire regions quickly. Instead of calming tensions, the conflict grew, communities split, and a movement began that permanently changed Christianity's structure and global history forever. Arguments turned into new churches, old alliances broke apart, and Europe entered a period of religious tension that shaped politics, culture, and daily life for centuries afterward. Many people blamed leadership choices for ignoring warnings, showing how financial pressure and pride can push institutions toward decisions that echo far beyond their original moment. When Leo died, the treasury was deeper in debt than before, leaving future leaders with problems that took years to manage and repair. That moment became a turning point, proving that damage does not always look dramatic at first, but can grow quietly until it changes everything around it. So when historians debate the worst pope, they are not just ranking bad behavior. They are measuring long-term consequences that affected millions of people worldwide. Some caused shock with single events, others slowly weakened trust, and a few combined both, creating perfect storms that reshaped faith, politics, and public opinion together. It also reminds us that titles alone do not guarantee wisdom, because leadership always depends on choices made day after day under pressure and temptation. Power without accountability can drift fast, especially when surrounded by loyal supporters who benefit from silence more than honesty or reform. Regular people often felt the results first, through higher taxes, unstable cities, and confusion about which voices truly represented spiritual guidance. These stories survived because communities recorded their anger, fears, and hopes, showing that public reaction can eventually challenge even the strongest authority figures. The pattern repeats across history, not just in religion, where personal ambition sometimes outweighs responsibility, leading to decisions that ripple outward for generations. Learning these events is not about mocking belief, but understanding how human behavior interacts with powerful institutions built to last beyond any single leader. It also explains why reforms appear again and again, as new generations try to correct mistakes they inherited from earlier times. Transparency, shared leadership, and clear rules often grow from moments when secrecy and favoritism caused serious harm in the past. The medieval period especially shows how family connections influenced elections, turning spiritual offices into political prizes fought over by rival groups. When loyalty goes to relatives instead of principles, corruption becomes easier, because decisions serve private interests rather than public responsibility. That environment created cycles of conflict, where each new leader tried to undo the last, keeping cities unstable and communities divided for decades. Foreign rulers sometimes stepped in, claiming they were restoring order, which added another layer of control and tension between regions. These interventions show how internal problems can invite outside influence, changing power balances far beyond the original location. Over time, stricter election rules and reforms aimed to prevent young or unprepared candidates from reaching the highest office again. Age limits, voting procedures, and oversight grew stronger, specifically because earlier experiences proved what could happen without them. So even the worst moments contributed lessons that shaped safer systems later, though the cost for those lessons was often very high. Another important point is how stories get exaggerated, repeated, and sometimes mixed with legend, making it hard to separate fact from dramatic retelling. Historians compare records, letters, and multiple sources to build the most accurate picture possible from events that happened centuries ago. Still, the core message remains clear. Leadership failures can shake institutions that people depend on for stability and meaning. That is why accountability matters, whether in governments, organizations, or communities, because trust takes years to build and seconds to break. It also shows that reform movements often start with one voice speaking against a common practice that others quietly question. Once that voice gains attention, support grows, and change becomes possible, even against powerful resistance from established authorities. We can see how communication, printing, and travel helped spread new ideas quickly during those turning points in European history. Information moving faster meant control became harder, allowing debates to reach people who never before had access to those discussions. The Reformation is one of the biggest examples of how ideas can reshape continents without traditional military conquest. It began with a disagreement over practice, but expanded into cultural, political, and educational transformation across many regions. Universities, local rulers, and everyday believers all played roles in deciding which direction their communities would follow. That diversity of responses created a patchwork of beliefs that still exists today in different countries and traditions. Looking back, we can see how a mix of personal behavior, financial pressure, and political ambition created the conditions for major change. None of these events happened in isolation. They were connected by networks of influence, family ties, and competing visions for the future. Understanding that complexity helps avoid simple good versus bad narratives and instead reveals how systems react to stress over time. It also highlights the importance of ethical leadership training, clear accountability, and independent oversight in any large organization. Modern institutions study these historical examples when designing rules to prevent concentration of unchecked authority in one person. Shared governance, term limits, and transparent finances all grew partly from lessons learned during those earlier centuries of conflict. Even today, discussions about leadership often reference historical cases to illustrate how quickly trust can erode without strong safeguards. So these stories are not just old drama, they are case studies in human behavior, power dynamics, and institutional resilience. They remind us that progress usually comes after recognizing mistakes rather than pretending they never happened. They also show that public awareness and education play huge roles in holding leaders responsible for their decisions. When communities understand history, they gain tools to question authority respectfully and demand higher standards for those in charge. That awareness encourages healthier systems where leaders serve people instead of using positions for personal gain or family advantage. And yeah, while some of these moments sound unbelievable, they pushed reforms that shaped how leadership works in many places today. So next time someone says history is boring, remember these stories of trials, parties, deals, and debates that literally changed the world. It's Marcus signing off, reminding you that learning the past helps us spot red flags in the present and build smarter futures together. Like, subscribe, and share.